Mom and Dad went to the Virgin Islands, and the souvenir they got me is an old dirty bastard T-shirt with some odd, like, cut stylings. I don't know how this happened. Hey Vic, I just watched the Poor Boy Eats video, and I've always kind of regretted that we never did like a Vlogbrothers type thing. But now that you are vlogging and I'm vlogging and we're both in new houses, I figured why not? Let's just go for it. I'm very inspired by your honesty, I must say, because I feel like you just straight up told like your entire life situation in such straightforward and honest terms without like leaving anything out, it felt like, other than I guess other people's business that you wouldn't really want to get into anyways. But as you were going through it, particularly towards the end and when you're describing your laundry situation, which was fucking hilarious, I was like literally thinking, which one of us is more chaotic mentally? Like I was wondering that. And then you said something like, "Well, I'm not as out of control schizo as my sister." And I could not help but laugh because I was like, "I don't know. I have an aesthetic of chaos that I do in my content. But my actual life is a lot of staring into space, organizing my thoughts. My videos are the result of things I've thought about for like weeks and weeks and weeks, and then I finally talk about it, you know? And so people will watch them and it'll seem like I'm just kind of ranting and raving or whatever, but it's because I'm actually remembering like 200 different thoughts I had about this subject for the last couple weeks and bringing each one of them back up, you know? And oftentimes I'm doing things with tangents and symbolism that just nobody picks up on because nobody bothers, even though I constantly am telling people to analyze my videos in more depth. No one does it. I don't know why I expect them to. No one's as good at analysis as I am, so I don't know why I would think anybody was capable. Now that I'm saying it out loud, I'm like, why would I think anybody could analyze my work? I'm the analyst. Um, well, fair enough. That's why I have to be a lot more honest, I think. I was watching this video and just thinking, like, man, I'm like way too good at like irony and masking and like it's not even like a positive, it's not positive for me, like it's not doing good things for me. Mostly makes me like more misunderstood. I keep thinking about, there's this FKA Twigs song where the first lyric she goes, "I'm still that mysterious bitch," and I love it because obviously I feel like that, but I feel like I leaned into mysteriousness as an aesthetic because it's what I'm attracted to and it's what I like. It's what I think is cool. So I am effortfully trying to be more mysterious and be more cryptic because that's what I'm looking for in art. You know, like I used to be obsessed with Yoshitoshi Abe's work just because it feels so mysterious. You know, he draws girls with like that look in their eyes, you know, like Serial Experiments Lane and the cover of fucking Welcome to the NHK. You know, like that's the aesthetic I'm trying to create, which is almost impossible to achieve cleanly. You know, like Abe's art style is very like rough, and it's entirely how much he's trained his hand that makes his art look that way. But like he can literally do it with his finger on an iPad and it looks unmistakably like his work, you know? And he'll draw that shit in 15 seconds and you're like, that's definitely Yoshitoshi Abe. That's my art. My art is, it has to look like no one else could have made this. It doesn't matter what I filmed it with. It doesn't matter what it sounds like. It doesn't even really matter what I'm saying. What matters is that only Trixie could have made this. No, unmistakably. So I have a ton of respect, though, for how Victor has achieved his own signature with much more, like, I guess, of a pop appeal, you know? Or I won't even call it pop, because it's not as though, I don't think he's figured out how to translate his work into being in front of enough people's eyeballs that people think, oh, Victor Collins, cinematographer, you know, like, I know there, I'm not, I'm not somebody who follows cinematography, so I can't actually, off the top of my head, name you one cinematographer who is not also like a director. I could not even name for you who the cinematographer who made Quentin Tarantino's movies Start Looking Good. I don't even know that guy's name, and I know I should. But I know there are people who do know the names of cinematographers. And I know that Victor is such an inventive and voiceful cinematographer. And I will say, if I have a criticism, if I can call it that, is like maybe too similar to Hiro Murai. Like, I guess that is a cinematographer I can name, but again, also a director. Hiro Murai? Is it Murai or Mirai? Hiro Murai, I believe. I know that's one of Victor's favorite cinematographers, and I think his work just looks a lot like it. Like, they have similar taste in what they're trying to achieve with the camera. But that's a very high compliment in my mind also, because I think he's one of the most distinctive cinematographers, and being able to look kind of like Hiro Murai is like a pretty good skill to have, especially living out here where I guess it's just an East Coast sensibility thing, right? I don't know where Hiro Murai is actually from, but the fact that Atlanta is shot the way that it is probably has to do with the fact that the East Coast looks the way that it does. And, you know, Norfolk is very aesthetically along those same lines. So, and Richmond and all that. I'm getting a little bit off topic. I've distracted myself thinking about cinematographers. So this is an example of like actual chaos in the video where I did not plan to go on a tangent about cinematographers. So in that way, this starts to feel like, oh, it's more like a unhinged schizophrenic rambling or whatever. But it's like, when I recenter myself, that's because I know there's another topic I have to get to in the video, and so that's how I progress it, you know? Oftentimes, when I go on those tangents, I'll cut the clip, think about it for a second, and then restart, you know, so that I can get my bearings again. This time, I decided to just roll through it into an explanation because it was such an opportune moment, you know? You always got to strike while the iron's hot. You can't let the ideas just fly away. I think that's why I was trying to decide which one of us is more chaotic, because I think Victor just has a lot more ideas he lets go of. And it's often out of like a vague sense of shame that this isn't going to make sense, or that he doesn't have the correct words. And you never will. I just bulldoze through all that, you know? People think I'm like great with words now. I've built up a reputation as a wordsmith, as somebody whose specific weakness was how bad I was with words. Like, that was what I considered to be like, ooh, you need work in this area, you know? And then worked in that area so extensively that I became an expert in that area. And, you know, I've done that in a couple of categories. And there's also certain places where I think the biggest reason I've struggled, and I think this is true for you too, Victor, is trying to do way too much by yourself and blaming yourself too much for the failures of things that who you are. Accidentally ended the clip when I changed hands. You are comparing yourself to the wrong people in your mind. And I think the reason for that, we all do this. All of us are like blaming ourselves for not being as good as like the industry standard, even though we know intellectually that most of the people in the industry had some kind of extenuating circumstances that got them the opportunity. Literally, they are not more talented than you. They just have more opportunities. And you know this, because you can turn on any fucking TV show and see worse cinematography than what you do. Like, I'm comparing Victor to Hiro Murai, one of the greatest of his generation. The fact that you can even attempt to imitate that is above the level of most of the cinematography actually happening in Hollywood. What you need to be comparing yourself to is every other independent creator. At that level, you're like way at a high level, you know? And the fact that you even understand the equipment that you have, like not even having the equipment, you know, again, that's something most people who have the equipment, They didn't buy it themselves. They didn't task themselves to become a full fucking independent cinematography studio. They just, I mean, you know what they're doing. You know they're not doing what you're doing. You know you are trying something way more ambitious than what other cinematographers, especially out here on the East Coast, are doing. You know you're doing something way more ambitious. You know I'm doing something way more ambitious than what I let on. But it's because when you talk about your ambitions, I mean, there's so many times Victor stops himself in his vlog to say, like, I know this sounds like cope, or I know this sounds like, yeah, it's all cope. Words are cope. Speaking is cope. Speaking, I didn't expect to go on this rant, but we have to, because this is really something that, like, I think about a lot, and I need you to understand this because you're my brother, and we haven't really talked about anything serious in a while. Words are authoritarian and evil. Inherently, that's what they're there for. Words exist to change the way other people think and what they're doing. Because why would you do anything for me if you didn't think I needed something? How do I make you think I need something most easily? Help! It's a symbol we invented. If you just say, help, people think, oh shit, that person needs something. Let me run over there. Now, how do you say help in an extremely complicated way? How do you get help with something that an issue other people don't understand? That's where words come in. And my whole art is basically trying to unravel an issue I don't understand. And that is an issue with my own mind, and particularly with my memories. I think where this all comes from, where this all starts, is that when I was a kid, having a good memory was like my whole identity. Like, my parents always praised me for it because my dad has a very terrible memory. The reason my dad has a terrible memory is he's unfathomably fucking traumatized. His whole childhood sucked. He was in the military after childhood, and that sucked. And basically everything before he met my mom is just too traumatizing for him to remember. And a lot of after he met my mom is too traumatizing for him to remember. So he's blocked out a lot of his life. And that's fine. That's not a problem. You know, he's got a stability that we're all relying on, basically. And it's powered mostly by running away from the core emptiness that is left by really not having been raised by anybody. So we, you know, as his children, we have some of that emptiness inside of us as well from, you know, man was working our whole lives. We really didn't see him that much. You know, we were much more influenced by my mom. And she also was not really raised by anybody. So there's a lot that we're compensating for in terms of their insecurities about their failures and our insecurities about their failures becoming our failures. So that's why we're tasking ourselves to this like ridiculously high level. And we put so much emphasis on words because just simply our parents' relationship was so governed by words, by the fact that my mom always corrects you if you're wrong. That's just, if she hears wrong, she's going to say something. She's going to try to correct it. And we grew up viewing that as like a noble thing. And then eventually entering society realized nobody likes that. Nobody in society likes that trait. And that's why our family has always been outsiders, is because we're people who recognize wrongs and seek to right them. And people who are doing wrong don't want to be righted, obviously. So what we're doing to them is evil. Phone filled up because I forgot to clear the 31 gigs of recently deleted. Anyways, to somebody who is evil, just being good is evil. To somebody who is good, just being evil is evil. So there is a war between good and evil. It is real. We are really fighting it. And being on the side of good always means being on the losing side, because evil is easy. Evil is just easier than being good. And so the effort of being good not only requires you to be unrelentingly good in the face of evil. It also requires you to inspire everyone around you to be unrelentingly good in the face of evil, or else they're just going to fuck you. Like, if you're the only good person surrounded by bad people, you're dead, you know? So on some level, to even survive, you have to understand the tactics of bad people, and sometimes that means you have to use those tactics to understand them. And then you start being afraid of yourself. And then you start investigating yourself to figure out, why would I do these terrible things to people I love throughout my whole life? And then you go, I need therapy. And then you go, I can't afford therapy. And then you go, you know what I can do though? Is talk about every single thought that enters my mind publicly and see what other people have to say about it. Maybe they've been to therapy. Maybe they talked to their therapist about this very topic. Maybe they are a therapist. And if you respond to all my comments, you know all these things are true. So my videos, I've said this in a few of them, they are bait. All of my videos are bait. They are always an attempt to draw a conversation, a specific conversation, out of the ether. I'm trying to bring eyes to a subject, and I'm either trying to figure out why I'm wrong or like how to be right more effectively. You know, like if I say something that's really good and all the comments are just like, you nailed it, then there's nothing else to do. If people are quoting the video in the comments, you won. You know, that's it. You've won. If the comments are saying what you said better, you're learning. If the comments are pointing out why you're wrong, you're very much learning. So these are all great reasons to bait out conversations. But if you want the conversation that you're trying to have, you have to be very careful with how you structure your content, how you phrase everything. And a lot of the time, I'm trying to speak to the weirdest fucking people in the world. And they're people who, honestly, when I was growing up, I wouldn't, or, you know, even in my early adulthood, a lot of them are people I would not have given the time of day. Like, a lot of the people that I talk to are people that, like, currently, are people that when I was younger, I would not have given these people the time of day because I was insecure about myself being, like, annoying and off-putting. And so when I met people who were even more annoying and off-putting than I was, it was really hard for me, you know, to be like, to be patient with them, you know. I never hung out with other autistic. My fucking autistic cousin set himself on fire last year, you know, like, I was not around for that kid. So I want to change that about myself, you know. I don't want to be looking at people like, oh, you're beyond reproach. But at the same time, I don't know how to just be nice all the time, you know. Like, I've been bullying this Roy Thomas person who seems like they need help, you know. I don't think they see it that way, but a lot of the other commenters do. You know, a lot of people who are seeing what's happening with this person are going, what is up with this person? And we're all kind of scratching our heads like, I've never met one of these before, you know. I tried to boil Roy Thomas down to a simplistic concept for the sake of a joke in a video, and then they proved themselves to be such a complicated person that it became way more interesting. So now I'm like studying them as like an object of study, you know, like, I need to get some scientists on this. Like, where's all my top comment interpreters? Let's all get on this and try to figure out what is going on with Roy Thomas, you know. That's just me following my own thread of intrigue. Like, I don't think, I really, for the same reasons you're talking about in your vlog, Victor, to make sure you know I'm still talking to you and that you can lock in on this part. You were talking about how, you know, there's an ebb and flow to how much money you're making and where are the opportunities in the industry. And the same thing is true for me. There's an ebb and flow in my audience having money. A big part of what I'm trying to do right now is get my core audience who are brokies to become people who have enough money to pay me. Literally, I'm doing like a whole, like the core of this whole therapy arc is not as much about myself. In my case, it's more investigating why am, like, what is going on with YouTube? You know, like, why is it so hard for me to broach certain videos into higher numbers? And like, I've kind of solved it now. Like, I've figured out what's the issue. This video is part of how I'm solving it. There's a tactic here because YouTube currently revolves around, I'm not going to call it incorporation, federation. That's the word I'm looking for. Federalizing your channels. Basically what I mean is communication between channels, networking. YouTube is heavily reliant on public networking right now. If you can draw an audience from one channel to another channel, YouTube really loves that. They like there to be an infrastructure between channels. And this allows channels to survive at a much smaller level than they used to be able to. Like, it used to be, if you didn't have 100,000 subscribers, you were nobody. Now you can have 10,000 subscribers, and if they're like, you know, if even a tenth of that is really dedicated, you've got a living. Like, you only need like 1,000 people to be paying you, if they're paying you like a decent amount, you know. Like, think about it. If 1,000 people are giving you $5 a month, you're making $5,000 a month. Like, that's crazy, actually. So if even, you know, law of the vital few says 20% of your audience will be where 80% of your income comes from. So again, if you have 10,000 dedicated viewers and 20% of them are paying you even $1, you know, again, you're making $2,000 a month. So that's pretty decent. And I think we could both be doing that. Like, not that, it wouldn't be that difficult, but I haven't figured out who am I federating with. And so that's why I make so much filtration content. So much filtration content. Because I'm really trying to scare away people who have the wrong idea about me. I don't want people around who think I'm ever going to, like, court their ideals that I've never stood for. And like, I'm kind of trying to recenter who I was originally, because I've got this video I'm working on where I found a bucket, and I don't know if this bucket was in this house or if I just brought it here and it was in mom's house or whatever, but it's full of my old writing, like everything I wrote during high school. And all of the sentiments of that writing are basically, the capitalist system is very bad, and I super wish I had friends. Like, those are like the two themes that run through all the songs I wrote. So like, they're also very sensitive. They're not like funny at all. They're not ironic. Like, there's no insincerity, because I learned all that in high school. I learned all that when I finally started having friends who were ironic and insincere. You know, millennials, that's our generation. That's how we communicate. And like, I learned that, and also listening to like more ironic music, like mindless self-indulgence. Like, reading my lyrics before discovering MSI is a different world, because I was barely even writing swears into them, you know, much less anything raunchy or dirty. It was super innocent, you know, which is, again, reflective of who I really am. I'm like naively innocent and blissful and wishing that everything goes okay, and like overly hopeful about humanity's future, compared to what is rational, what I know is rational. I self-identify in a way as kind of like a sleeper cell agent, or like some kind of you know, some kind of spy. But now I'm one of those spies that has been now like outed as a spy. So like, you know, I can't really be a spy anymore. But like, I think that when I experienced puberty, I became so confused about my identity, because I knew right away that I was a trans woman. I just didn't know what that means. Like, I was obsessed with like femininity and the idea of traps in anime, you know, and like and trying to be that way, but I just hid it from everyone. Nobody in my family knew I was wearing, you know, like putting on my mom's clothes and stuff, like in secret, talking about being bisexual on the internet, you know, having dated a 17-year-old guy when I was 14 only by phone for only a couple of phone calls, and then getting weirded out about it. Nobody knew that was happening. So I'm very, very secretive, especially with myself. And I caught on to this. I was saying that like dealing with my memories is a big part of this content, because again, growing up, I cataloged everything. Like, I always remembered everything. And I think that obsession with memory actually happened because of having lost all of my memories after like the first. I want to say the first Lollapalooza, probably maybe the second one also, but I remember parts of the second Lollapalooza. I'm pretty sure that going on tour around the country when I was like an infant wiped any like established sense of self that I had had before that point. This is me studying psychology, knowing child psychology. Like, this is my theory looking back on it now that I have perspective as an adult. This is not something I ever thought about growing up. I never thought any of this. I just, from like age 4 onwards, was obsessively cataloging my memories because I had felt that I didn't have them before a certain point. Like, everything I knew about myself was stuff my mom had told me from reading me my baby book. And so I sort of fetishized that information because that is who I thought I am, is like, okay, I'm 8 pounds, 8 ounces. I was born on August 8th. So I'm like the 8 person, you know, I my initials CC. So I'm also related to C's, you know, this was what I was thinking about as a kid. This is the way I thought, was like, okay, this is who I am. And part of that was gender male. You know, it says that on the baby book. And so when people told me that I was feminine as a kid, I just told them they were wrong. I was like, but I'm a boy. So what does that mean? You know, what the fuck are you talking about? You can't call me a girl. I have a penis. You know, that was my mentality as a kid. But all that led to for me was not fitting in at all. If I had been like, okay, I'm a girl, you're all correct, and the baby book's wrong, then I would have just started dressing like a girl and playing with the toys I wanted to play with and hanging out with the kids I was actually interested in hanging out with, and had a totally different experience of childhood that I think would have been a lot better than being bullied and singled out for being feminine and then arguing with people that I'm a boy, but then not having any shared interests with any boys whatsoever, you know, except for the rare gamer, and I never liked the same games that they did. So it really wasn't working out for me, this whole identifying as a guy thing. But when I went through puberty, it just got way worse, because then it was like, okay, well, now I really hate the masculinity and the male identity and everything that testosterone's doing to me. I really hate it, you know, and I still hate it. I work against, I take estrogen, you know, I need to get back on actual T blockers, but that's another video. The point of all that is that at some point I reached a level of suppression where I had experienced too much weirdness from myself, and I started trying to rationalize it any way I could, you know, where any way other than like self-acceptance. And just like, okay, let me try to find a way to, like, basically I was just so embarrassed about saying anything about my real feelings or my real self that I just didn't, you know. Again, I would write like songs and poetry. I never released any of this. Like, even though I've been an internet poster since I was like a kid, I didn't post my art on the internet, you know. Like, all the stuff that I'm going through this bucket and reading is stuff that has never been seen before. A lot of it I forgot. Like, I literally am reading shit I wrote when I was like 14 and going like, what the fuck? I don't remember writing this, and it's good. And it's more honest than like most of the stuff I've done since, and I still feel the same way. What the fuck, you know? Like, that's a super weird feeling to just kind of warg back into being 14 and like, oh, I'm the same fucking person, but I've learned a lot more words. And unfortunately, a lot of those words just got me farther from the truth, you know? Like, the truth was right there in the book. Everything about who I am today is the same sentiments, just again, like, I didn't know how to share those words with other people. But if I had ever just recorded the songs I wrote when I was 14, someone would have enjoyed them, and I would have become that person's friend. The problem is that I was insecure about the idea of who's not going to enjoy it. I was so busy thinking about who wouldn't like my content that I just never bothered getting it to the people who would enjoy it. And so the only stuff that I would post about is stuff that I felt less insecure about, which again, being good with words. The more I felt like, oh, I can't believe I managed to put this into words, that made me feel special. And even the songs, like as I'm reading the songs, I can feel that coming through them. Like I can see as the songs progress and I get like more and more precise with the words, you know, like it starts off feeling like I'm just being vague, but then it's like, oh, right at the end I clinch it, you know, like this is exactly it. I can feel how that's the process I was going through, is trying to understand myself, trying to use better and better words to understand myself. And so, you know, at some point, feeling like I understand myself, I have to now make the audience understand me. And a lot of the time that requires them to understand themselves, and they're going through the same shit I was. They're also hung up on something that doesn't make sense. You know, they're hung up in all their irrational mind games that they've been playing with themselves their whole lives. And I have to somehow unravel that for them just so that they can go get a job and pay me to live. So again, frontier psychiatry. Like I see myself as basically doing free work in exchange for the concept of future pay, pretty much the same way you are. You know, like, but it's a different trust paradigm that we're operating under. I'm not trying to get people to trust me as a cinematographer. My cinematography is what it is. It's part of how the message is delivered. And so there is thought put into it. You know, I decided to film in this room because it reflects the message of this video the best. The rest of the house, the aesthetic of it right now, does not reflect what I'm saying in this video. That's why I haven't left this room. It's the only room that looks right for the tone of this video right now, which is I'm talking to my little brother who I shared a room with for like 15 years or something. No, less than that. 13 years. 13 years we shared a room, you know, and most of the time we hung out in one another's bedrooms after that, you know, playing video games, listening to music type shit. So that's the aesthetic. That's what I'm going for. It brings the honesty out of me to be in an environment to like this, and literally Victor's old house that I just moved into, you know, and talking to Victor, Victor, I'm talking to you. I know I keep like referring to you in the third person because I'm also talking to both of our audiences. But I have, as I said in a recent video, begun to regard my audience as a part of my body, because there was a video where somebody said your audience is like your immune system. And Kendrick Lamar has an incredibly powerful immune system. And if you listen to anybody talk about Kendrick Lamar, like who's met him in person, they all mention this, what I'm going to keep referring to as immune system. No, we're not going to call them bodyguards because that's not what they are. They're not being paid to bodyguard Kendrick. They probably just receive, you know, like they probably are paid by him for a job that is called something like security, but like the job is to arrive when needed for the sake of what's happening, you know, like I doubt there is even a ton of direct organization involved. It's more like simply there are people who know when Kendrick is going to be where he's going to be, and they be there, you know? But that is like real G level communication that most of us are not capable of. We just didn't come up in an environment where there's trust like that. We don't have people we trust like that. You know, Kendrick has lost 16 friends. Consider how many friends he must have if he's lost 16 of them. That's a lot of fucking friends. You know, my friend Landon has lost like 6 friends, and it's destroyed him. So I don't know how Kendrick is fucking still alive after losing 16 friends. I've lost 0 like friends to death. You know, I've lost friends to time, but I haven't lost any friends to death. So you know, that's also a part of why I can be so playful and be so chaotic, and I'm not worried about the money that much. It's like I haven't had to pay for any funerals. I haven't you know, like I don't have those kinds of social responsibilities that really task you to that level. And perhaps that is something that is shameful about me, or that I probably feel the most shame about, is not doing more to contribute financially to the people who I know need it the most, like people who really just need money. Like there is people who's like, my problem in life is not I need more money. Like I have shelter, I have access to food. You know, like having more money would pull me out of debt, but I don't really believe in debt. Like debt is not a real problem, you know? Like debt is a fake problem that you have in your head. Like debt can become a real problem if somebody decides to press you for that money, but if you're in debt to an organization that would create more legal liability by like physically attacking you than they want to, you know, or they don't want to get tied up in like a big legal battle, or if they just know they're going to get the money from you anyways, the government can just take your money when you're dead, you know, like they could just seize all your assets. So like they're really not too worried about it. Um, you only fuck over your children, which neither of us have. Like debt is only a problem for whoever it gets passed on to, and we don't have anybody to pass the debt on to. So it's just not worth like considering a real problem as opposed to obviously if you have kids then it's different. But like yeah, or if you're in debt to the mob, it's different. But like if you're in debt to like a credit card company, you know, at some point you're going to set up a payment plan. When you have that kind of income, they're gonna come for you. Like I'm, I make so little money that nobody cares about my money. Like nobody's ever after it. Nobody's ever trying to get money from me. Nobody, even people who I used to just loan money. Like I used to have a few friends who will just hit me up. Hey, can I borrow $10? I'm like, I don't have $10 anymore. Like I cannot. There's nobody who I can like help with my money, which is freeing in its own way because it means nobody's trying to get it. And when you have money, man, they be coming for it. They be coming out of the fucking woodwork. You have a dime, they want that dime. Like, so, you know, spend it before they can get to it. All right, that's enough of this rant. Hopefully this made sense. I'm really curious if Victor's takeaway from this will be that I am exactly as much more schizo than him as he thought, or if I'm secretly so organized mentally that I have to deliberately create chaos in order to like stop thinking in such an organized manner. My natural state of mind is make a list. Like my natural inclination is, ooh, I see a bunch of things. I wonder how I can list those, you know, like ooh, I've noticed like a really esoteric connection between 10 totally unrelated things. How do I make that a list? Like, anyway, enough. Anime forever?